one. There we go, got him. That one feels like a pretty good one. Man, I'm just a kid at heart when it comes to this. I love crappie fishing, I always have. I spent so much time when I was a kid crappie fishing with my grandparents. I got a cabin out in the Alexandria, Minnesota area, and we used to spend a lot of time pan fishing, you know. It was just as much bluegills as crappies, but man, I love getting out and doing this. And you know, spring crappie fishing, it's something that can get actually a little bit tricky. People get really excited about getting out crappie fishing, and here's why. You know, you get the ice come off, all of a sudden the water warms up, and they come into the shallows, and they're there for just a little bit, and they do a little bit of feeding, and they give you a chance to catch them in the spring before the weed growth really starts. Then they come in a second time. They'll leave, then they come in a second time, and that's about the spawn, okay? That's somewhere in the mid-60s. Right now, these fish are started in. So what I'm doing right now is I'm fishing those fish that are coming in for the spawn. They're not ready to spawn yet, but they're on their way. And what we're gonna talk about today is where you wanna find those fish, because it's not as simple as just going up into 2-3 feet of water where they're gonna make their beds, you know, maybe 4 or 5 feet of water. What I'm actually doing is fishing that staging area before they go up for their spawn. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. That's what we're gonna talk about as far as how to find spots like this and how to fish these fish. So stay right where you're at. It's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a fun one. Man, I love crappie fishing. Ooh, missed that one. Oh no, I didn't. He was just swimming at me. Look at that. I thought I missed him. He was swimming at me. I set the hook on some slack line. Look at that. Another crappie coming in here for spawning. Not a giant, but you know, one of the things about this time of the year is you're gonna catch so many numbers of fish. And what you gotta understand is a lot of the smaller ones, they're coming in here. They're coming in here to spawn. So what happens is, a little bit later in the year, you're gonna end up in a deal where some bigger fish are gonna school together. And you know, you're gonna be able to really dial in that group of fish that you wanna catch. At this time of the year though, what you gotta understand is all these fish are coming to the same area for the same reason. So with that being the case, what's gonna happen is you're gonna catch a lot of those 8, 9, 10-inch fish. And in between there, you're gonna catch enough to mix in some good ones. But the other thing to keep in mind too is, man, those 8, 9, 10-inch fish, they're great eating size crappies, especially, there goes another one right there, especially at this time of the year, coming off the coldest water of the year. And then the other side of that, you gotta remember your bigger fish, they're the females and they're getting ready to spawn. So I really like keeping some of those smaller fish for the dinner table. Oh, there's a better one right there. This is more what I'm talking about. Now you're into that 10-inch range with that fish right there. A better eater size crappie, and yet not being up into that 12-inch, 13, 14-inch stuff. I'll let those fish go all day because most of those fish are gonna be your spawners. That's an awesome fish. Catch a pile of those today, huh? Got him. Man, there is just a little pile of fish right there. Let's talk about this location a little bit because there's something special about it. If you can find this, and this exists, I mean, it exists in a lot of places. Another good one. Look at that. Look at that. What an awesome crop. I'll take that all day. That's a 10-inch fish. Perfect springtime crappie. But here's what's going on with this location. What happens is these fish, when they come in here, you can see back here behind me, there's some boats back in there, and they're fishing up in there shallower. That's where these fish are gonna spawn. These fish aren't gonna spawn where I'm fishing. Where I'm fishing right now, this is a staging spot. And what's happening is these fish are just setting up here, but here's why they're setting up here. There's a little hump. It's not much. It comes up just a little bit, and it can't be more than 20 feet long and maybe 10 feet wide. I mean, it's the size of my boat, but it's right over here. And what's happened is it's a natural stopping point for these fish. So they're just roaming around the outside of this, and I'm actually sitting out here at 9 feet. This thing comes up to 7, you know, in some spots 6. And it's a small little deal. Like I say, it's about the size of this boat. But the reality with this spot is it's something to stop fish and hold them. It gives them a spot to sit, because bait will sit on that. The wind blows into it, it catches bait. There's a whole bunch of things that happen that allow these crappies to want to stop here and stage, because right now they're still eating, obviously. I mean, they're eating as fast as I can throw it in. And the bottom line is they're just roaming around the outside of this thing eating. So that's what you want to look for. Don't necessarily feel like you got to get right up in there right away with all those boats. Now, they're probably catching a few, but most of the fish are not up in there yet. They're not ready to spawn, so they're staging in some of these other spots. So here I am sitting in 9 feet of water. I'm probably the deepest boat when you look at the guys that are crappie fishing here, but I'm catching fish really, really consistently because I found one little holding spot. And the neat thing about it in today's world is you can find a lot of these with your map. I mean, these maps tell us pretty much everything. But what you need to do is look for those areas where they're going to spawn, okay, where you've got a softer bottom where they can go in and they can do their deal, and then go outside of that a little bit and try to find those little structures that'll hang them up on their way in. I don't think people often think of floats being an aggressive tactic, but I'll tell you what, you can actually make fishing a float pretty aggressive by when you flip that out there. If you don't get a fish to bite right away, and a lot of times it'll hit the water and they'll see that bait sinking and they'll just nail it. But if you don't get a fish to bite right away, don't be afraid of jiggling it around, moving it. You know, all you're doing is when you see that bobber jiggling, you're actually putting that same action down there on the bait. You're moving that bait around and catching their attention. And that's what I call fishing aggressively through a float. You can do that with a slip float. All of a sudden it's just jigging a little bit harder, grabs their attention, and especially in the spring, when they're roaming all over and they're coming in for this and there's tons of fish here, you want to grab their attention and get them to you. And a lot of times you can do that by just doing this right here. There he goes. Spit it back out. There, he's got it. You know, one of the things you'll notice is I don't put a big hook set on crappies. You know, they got that paper thin mouth, and I don't put much of a hook set on bluegills either. What I tend to do is I'm using an ultralight, okay? And these ultralight rods make it real easy for me to just load that rod tip up and start reeling. And most of the time, you can see how that fish is hooked. They're gonna hook just like that most every single time, as long as you got that rod tip up in the air so that when it loads up, it loads down and pulls that jig up. You can see he's hooked exactly where I want him hooked. Simple deal, one after another. Wow. This is just fun. This is fun and easy. This is one of those where I guarantee you, when my wife sees this show, she's gonna say, I wanna go right there. I wanna go to that spot and I wanna go fish crappies. There he goes again. Same deal, same spot, same everything. Oh yeah. I'm gonna show you what I'm using for a jig here once I get this fish in, because I think it's a smaller guy. But that's an example of what I'm talking about. You know, you're gonna get some of those 10-inch fish, you're gonna mix it in with some of these 8-inch fish. They're all just in the neighborhood. But before I bait back up, let me show you what I'm using here. This is the Lindy Little Nipper. I think this is probably one of the oldest and one of the best panfish jigs ever made. It's a real simple deal. It's got hair tied on it. Today I'm using a pink one. Comes in a variety of sizes. You can get them in a 64th, a 32nd, an 1/8. You can get them in a whole variety of colors. So whatever it is that you think is best for your pan fishing, you can get it. You can get it in that color. One thing I will tell you, I'm fishing some pretty stained water today. So I started this morning with bright colors. This water, a lot of wind blew out of the north and it kind of made this chocolate milk down here. So use that jig and the color of the jig to help those crappies find your bait. And you know, I mean, today I'm not gonna choose to use a black jig. This is one of those deals where if the water were clear, I might start with that black jig. I might start with something brown, something like that. But today with this dirty water, I'm gonna start with a little nipper in bright colors. I got the white hair on a pink jig, and obviously they're finding it. Got him. That was kind of game I played with that one. Jiggled it, he took it for a second, spit it back up, I jiggled it, got him to bite it again. Another good one. Man, I'll tell you what, how fun is this? It's been a great morning crappie fishing. It's a pretty simple deal. You can go out and do this at this time of the year, but one of the biggest things you want to do is what we did today. Look for spots when you're looking for fish in the spring like this. Look for spots adjacent to those spawning grounds. Look for little bumps, little holding spots, because eventually here, they're gonna be up where all those other boats are, but they're not there yet. They're sitting out here, and that's why we're catching them. We're out here in a little bit deeper water. Those guys, I'm watching them in there, they're all moving a lot. The fact that they're moving a lot tells me that they haven't found a congregated bunch of fish. But here, we have found a little spot that's congregating them. And if you can find those kind of spots, I'll tell you what, you can catch springtime crappies right before the spawn all day long. You can catch all different sizes, just have a ball.